Welcome back, candidates, to the lesson. Today we are going to continue from where we stopped in our last session. In our last class, we discussed various ethical dilemmas, which we also refer to as ethical moral dilemmas. In our today's session, we covered leaks, we covered whistleblowing, we talked about gossip, secrecy, rumors, and so on. So today we are going to study ways in which ethical dilemmas can be handled in communication. And candidates, although some ethical dilemmas are most easily solved than others, all involve making evaluations and judgments about what is morally right and wrong, what is fair and what is not, and also what will cause harm and what will not. So ethical communication requires effective critical thinking, requires skills, requires recognizing the importance of diverse perspectives, requires respect for the well-being of self and others. It also requires taking responsibility for individual and also group actions, and so on. Because previously we had said that every communication, when we communicate messages, those messages have consequences. We mentioned also that in our previous sessions that it is important to be sensitive to people's feelings when you communicate. So effective communication also requires reflecting on the choices that group members make, on the choices that you make as an individual, and so on. All right? So what are some of the ways in which ethical dilemmas can be handled in communication? Now, when faced with an ethical dilemma or ethical dilemmas, the foremost thing to consider is the law. Consider the law. So we can call that legal considerations. Legal considerations. Now, one place to look for guidance is the law. If saying something or writing something is clearly illegal, then you have no dilemma. You just obey the law. That's the first consideration. The second consideration is moral consideration. Moral considerations. Now, candidates, although legal considerations may resolve some ethical questions, one has often to rely on his own judgment and principles. And if your intent is honesty, then your statement will be ethical, even though it may factually be incorrect. But if your intent is to mislead or manipulate the audience, then the message is unethical, regardless of whether it is true or not. So looking at the consequences of decisions and opting for a solution that provides the greatest good for the greatest number of people, then that is a moral consideration that can help resolve ethical dilemmas in communication. Point number 3. Remember, we are discussing ways in which we can handle ethical dilemmas in communication. Maintain candor. Maintain candor. Maintain candor. What is the meaning of candor? Candor refers to truthfulness, refers to honesty, refers to frankness in communication with other people. And candidates, although revealing everything you know about a situation may not always be appropriate, For example, providing all your information to adversaries during intense and sensitive negotiations will only compromise your position. As much as we encourage truthfulness, as much as we encourage honesty, as much as we encourage frankness in communication, as much as we encourage transparency with people at all time, we say that it's not always appropriate. It's important to be wise, to choose what to say when. Otherwise, your words can be used against you, especially when operating in a competitive environment, because not everyone is for your benefit or for your good. So that is maintaining candor. When you want to resolve ethical dilemmas, it's important to maintain truthfulness, honesty, and frankness, because that will help you resolve ethical or moral dilemmas. Number 4, keep messages accurate. Accuracy. Now, candidates, when you are relaying information from one source to another, you need to communicate the original message as accurately as possible. Why? Because ethical communicators do not take liberties with the messages that they pass on. Keep messages accurate. That will help you to handle ethical dilemmas in communication. Number 5, avoid deception. Avoid deception. Avoid deception. Now, candidates, ethical communicators are always vigilant in their quest to avoid deception, to avoid fabrication, to avoid intentional distortion or withholding of information in their communication. When you avoid deception, then you can deal with ethical dilemmas in communication. Number 6, behave consistently. Behave consistently. Now, one of the most prevalent yet noticeable areas of unethical behavior is communicating one thing and then doing another. You must always monitor your behavior to ensure that it matches what you say to others. You don't preach water and drink wine. By so doing, you'll be able to handle ethical dilemmas in communication. 7, maintain confidentiality. Maintain confidentiality. Maintain confidentiality when required. When something tells you something and expects you not to divulge that information to others, remember, a sacred trust has been placed on you. Why? Because you are required to maintain confidentiality in that case. When you tell me something and you confide in me that what I've told you is confidential, that information, I should not relay it to others. Because the moment you tell me that the information I'm giving you is confidential, then I need to treat that information, I need to treat that agreement, because if I agree to keep confidentiality, then we say a sacred trust has been placed on me. So divulging that information to others without your consent, that is not the right way to go. Because that is not the right way to handle ethical dilemmas in communication. Maintaining confidentiality. Number 8 is in relation to timeliness. Ensure timeliness in communication. Ensure timeliness of communication. Now, currently the timing of a message can be very critical. When you delay sending messages so that others do not fully benefit, they can rightly assume that you have acted unethically. So one way to avoid that is to ensure that you convey messages on timely basis or when required to do so. Number 9, confront unethical behavior. Confront unethical behavior. Now, candidates, to maintain consistency or to maintain a consistent ethical point of view, you must confront unethical behavior when you observe it. Because public condemnation of unethical persons may not be necessary, but it is important that people understand that your own tolerance for unethical behavior is very low. It should be known that you do not condone unethical behavior. And one way to communicate that you do not condone unethical behavior is for you to confront it when you observe it. You do it consistently. All right? You condemn it publicly. Consistently. Confronting unethical behavior consistently will help resolve ethical dilemmas in communication. So candidates, that will mark the end of our today's lesson, where we've discussed various ways of handling unethical dilemmas in communication. Number 1, legal considerations. The first place to turn to when you have a moral dilemma is the law. If the law considers that situation illegal, if the law does not allow it, then you have no ethical dilemma. Just obey the law. Another way of handling an ethical dilemma, we said, is moral considerations. Number 3, maintain candor, which means truthfulness, it means honesty, it means integrity, and so on. Number 4, keep messages accurate. We've said that when you are relaying information from one source to another, communicate the original message as accurately as possible. Number 5, avoid deception. Why? Because ethical communicators are always vigilant in their quest to avoid deception, to avoid fabrication, to avoid intentional distortion of information or withholding of information. Avoid deception. Number 6, behave consistently. Why? Because sometimes we say one thing but behave differently. That is one area of unethical behavior, communicating one thing and doing another. You must always monitor your behavior to ensure that it matches with what you say. Behave consistently. Number 7, maintain confidentiality. In our last lesson, we talked a lot about secrecy. Maintain confidentiality. When someone tells you or gives you certain information, and you agree that that information is confidential, you have a sacred trust to ensure that that message is not released to third parties. Confidentiality. Number 8, ensure timeliness in communication. Then lastly, we've discussed confronting unethical behavior. That effectively brings the lesson to an end. But as we close, here is your assignment. Here's your assignment. Explain 7 ways in which moral dilemmas may be handled in communication. Make sure the assignment is done. When answering the question, do not directly refer to your notes. Try and see if you can actively recall what we have learned today. Thank you. God bless you. Bye-bye.